Okay. W- Welcome to the Holy Spirit's Curriculum of Joy podcast. My name is Wanaka Oberhuber, and I'm your host. My guest today is Mike Oppenheim. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, and thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I do too. It's so wonderful to have people show up and be wonderfully willing to share their stories and their insights. So thank you for doing that.
Definitely.
So I like to start with a question which you can take your time to answer. And if you don't take your time, then you'll get more questions from me. That's the only consequence you get from it. So, how did you come to see the world the way you do today?
Today is going to be how I'm going to answer this question. So I'm not going to answer for yesterday even, because literally the guy you would have interviewed yesterday is not at all the guy today. And I think that's sort of my answer in a very short sense, but I will elaborate. I'm an emotionally compelled person, but I didn't know that was okay. And I didn't know that that was unique or that that was even me for many years, if not most of my life. And only recently have I started to see how individually we all see the world and how individually we each decide whether to take other people's sense of reality into our own or not. And I've been reeling in a negative way most of my adolescent and early life from the lack of a realization of that. I was letting other people inform me about reality too much, and I was dismissing my own opinions too much. I will blame this fairly in my words, somewhat on socialization, but mostly on myself. But I will say that without the American you're a boy 1980s socialization process, I probably would have had more confidence in my subjective view of reality. But instead, I definitely felt like I should suppress my stronger emotions. I should not admit to feeling as much as I do, meaning, like, I think in modern parlance, some people might say sensitive, but I've thought a lot about this. Insensitive people have convinced sensitive people that sensitive is a pejorative and that it's a bad quality and that there's something wrong with being sensitive. And sensitive people very, very unfairly judge insensitive people, but they don't go out of their way to say that the same way publicly. So there's an actual, like, not double-edged sword. There's an actual even subjective opinion of each side. And so the person you're talking to today is really interested in how can I be at peace knowing that I am a sensitive person who used to internalize that as negative, but now I'm trying to internalize it not as positive, because that's equally arrogant and wrong, but to just internalize it as that's me. So I'm starting to really understand that, like, today I woke up and my emotions felt strong and they felt compelling. And so I had to talk myself down from acting on them. And other days they feel strong and compelling and I don't even have time to talk myself down. But I do know that acting out of my emotional state has always been negative for me, but observing my emotions and acting later has always been my greatest advantage. So I think my worldview is one of caution, hesitation, but also confidence, which is that even though I'm often sad about how I feel about our culture, our society, and our world, and I'm speaking about globalization, I also feel like there's a real reason I'm here. Like, there's a deep personal reason why I'm here. And I think part of it is to help other people feel confident younger than I did who are like me.
Wow, that's really, really important to recognize that where you are at or the way you feel is valid, and to be willing to engage with it, like you were saying, if necessary, to talk yourself down. Yeah, well, yeah, if you're really in a state of mind in which you can't act upon it because it would be harmful, yes, it's important to know how to get out of there. And
Yeah.
if you've learned that, that's amazing.
Well, and I think the only way I've learned that is through trial and error and a lot of error. But also the other thing I have on my side is my parents taught me to meditate at a very young age. And they always said, when you're really feeling out of control, just sit down and take 20 minutes to meditate, then see how you feel. And that's saved me from all really, truly negative repercussions that probably would have come my way.
And the other thing you were speaking about is taking your opinions seriously,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
and not saying that opinions of others are more important than your own. And yes, I've been through that same back and forth of taking other opinions as more important and taking my own more important, and going back and forth. And yes, you're right about you're very judgmental when you're in that swing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether the others are or not. It's
Mm-hmm.
just very
Yeah.
judgmental.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, that's really, really important that you recognize that and that you're sharing that, because people, if you're in that state of that swing of, okay, my opinions are very important, I'm better than everyone else, and then the other side, oh, everyone else is so much more into it, there's so much, they get it, they know who I am better than I do, I better listen to them. The thing is, yeah, in the background you have this whole insecurity issue, because if you're secure, you don't need to worry about whether your opinion is valuable or not, or whether someone else's is valuable or not. You will be always coming from where you're at that moment, and be willing to engage with that without judging it.
That's really insightful. I think a lot of people pay for therapists to tell them that every week. Like just emotional security, people literally are willing to pay for it.
Yeah, and so I think I've gained a lot from A Course in Miracles and its teachings, in which it says, for instance, we all are infinitely valuable in the mind of God. Now, when you open that up, it also speaks about things like we all are meant to be perfectly happy, and we can agree that we all want to be perfectly happy, and that all is set up so that we all are perfectly happy at the same time. It's not something where you need to change anything about anyone else or anything else, because it's available to everyone. The thing is, we've learned to have this idea of special relationships where you have to get something from someone or something in order to be happy, or you have to do this or that, or you have to achieve certain things in order to be happy, and none of that ever works. So it's a big lie that we've been telling ourselves.
Yeah. You spoke before the podcast. You said I should not use famous people's names unless I'm really prepared to be careful about what I say. And so I'd rather not use their names right now. But I think most people watching this or listening in 2025 know that there's a lot of dominant world players out there, people geopolitically in charge, so to speak. And I think that too many normal people, which is almost every other person in the world, thinks that they're responsible for them and that they can't be happy unless they are on the same side as whoever's going to win in this geopolitical frame they've set up. But that frame is the antithesis of what Course in Miracles, which I also once read, talks about. And it's about how scarcity, and that's what is driving most of our unhappiness, is what you just spoke about, like a lack of a belief in abundance. And I think if not read carefully, you would think they're talking about abundance of gold and wealth and compliments and things like that. But that's not at all, obviously, what the book is talking about, or you. But I would say that is the unique paradigm struggle right now that I see is, and I'm sure it's repeated through history, but I don't think it's happened in the last 60, 70 years, is this. Normally, when like Napoleon marches troops to war, you're just gonna have to fight in the war, or they're gonna kill you. They drag you out of your home. They might conscript you in the Civil War or even in World War I or II. But like the point is, people didn't used to think they had power over the powerful people, and right now there's an illusion of that, I believe, and an illusion of control. And so what you said is extra remarkable to me right now in 2025, because if you want to be happy right now, it's not a ignore the news or follow the news. It's not protest or don't protest. It's not get with the team or get away from the team. It's be happy in both. Be happy in all of those. Like, how are you going to sit yourself in a sense of security no matter what's going on around you? And literally the thing I keep running into when I read social media posts by other people who I like and know but don't necessarily agree with is they have this, like, they have what you just spoke about, which is this arrogance of their opinion. And it's interesting that my personality is turned off by that, even if they share my opinion. So if someone, like, let's say I say blue is the best color ever, and then I see someone online say blue is the best color ever, and if you like purple, that's really a mistake, and you should stop telling us that purple's better. Like, it infuriates me, and I want to side with purple now because I'm like, so it's really interesting because what you're talking about is a lot of really what I struggle with, but also I'm 43 going on 44. I get better at it literally every day. I get better at what the Course in Miracles taught me, which I read it July 25th to July 25th, I think 2 years ago. So I did, the exercise every day, and it was very life-changing. It's like enough stuck that I was really glad I did it. And when people say, like, are you glad you did it? I would say, I'm glad I did it. I'm not going to do it again. Like, that's how I explain it to people. But I hope it sticks in 10 years. I hope I still not only associate the positiveness that I do with it, but that what you just said is really, I'm going to jump in with one more comment and then I'm going to shut up. But there is I read in a different book once, and it really stuck, that a thermostat is just set to whatever level you set it to, and then you can change the thermostat. And so it suggested that you change your thermostat where your baseline is like peace. Your baseline isn't super excited, all that kind of stuff. So I really have been working on that after reading Course in Miracles, but with what you just said and what I took away from it. And I really do think that that's the abundance that any religion talks about, that it's a mental state. It's an acceptance of what is, even if what is terrifying or unacceptable, because not accepting reality is actually more terrible than the terrible reality you don't want to accept, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a very important thing to differentiate or think about, is that accepting what you've made up, right, about the world is actually key to being able to change your mind about it.
That's what I want the title to be: accepting what you made up. I just want to say that now. Write that down as a possible title. That's brilliantly stated. Wow.
So this idea of separation is what brought about the world, according to A Course in Miracles. So the idea of separation gets us all riled up all the time. And we are all the time, right? Most of the time, let's put it that way. So am I. Yeah? No questions asked here. Yep. I'm willing to admit it, and I know that that's where I'm at, and that I do, and I have become an advocate for coming from where you are at. So even if I'm riled out about it, that is fine, because that's helpful. Even just admitting it and speaking about it openly, when you're riled up, when you're enjoying things, when you think things are crazy, and when you think you're on top of the world, none of it is true, but it's always where you're coming from, and it's always helpful, because you are not able to change your mind about anything if you don't accept where you're at, right? As we just said.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because it sounds circular, but it's really not. It's not circular. It's there is an end to that cycle if you really get it. And the end is being okay that it's a cycle. Like, it's like, like I keep thinking I'm going to find peace and then hold on to it. But the desire to hold on to anything is going to be conflict, because that's impossible. I'm aging, you're aging, my children are aging, my parents are aging, and it's just like I just want to stop and then keep everything where it is. And then the second I do that, I'm bored out of my mind.
Yeah, it's a very interesting thing that the world we made, right, as the Course in Miracles states it, or the dream,
The dream, yeah.
the dream is never satisfying.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
so we could look at it in any way. It's never satisfying to us. You know, the only thing that is satisfying is something that is not found in the dream, but in our nature, in who we are. And
Yeah.
that is established by our source. In A Course in Miracles, it's the Father, I say the parent, right? Or the source, or the God, as some others would say. Yeah, the source. But we are not separate from that source. And that's the only consolation we'll ever get, is that we already are perfect.
Yeah. This is a perfect day to have this conversation with you, because I woke up thinking that I have many careers, but I woke up thinking one of my careers is going better than it's ever gone, and yet I still am not satisfied, and I want to understand why I'm not satisfied. I don't want to make it better or make it worse, and I don't want to quit it or throw more into it. I want to figure out, why am I not satisfied, but why am I still doing it? I don't know if that resonates with you.
I think that's a very important question to ask. And why can I be satisfied? Because we tend, yes, I also love looking around the next corner and thinking, if I've achieved this, I will be happy, right?
Yeah.
I love it. It's like one of my main occupations, right?
Yeah.
If this person says yes, then I will be happy. If this works out, I will be happy. And of course that moment of enjoyment, or what I think is like, I conquered it, I did it. This moment of enjoyment is very short. And it may be seeming sweet, but it's not. And in
Yeah.
A Course in Miracles, it has this idea of the two pictures. I don't know if you've heard of, if you remember reading that, where the one picture has a huge golden frame and something really small in the middle. And it's all terrible things if you actually look close to it. And it's all hiding the thing in the middle, right? And then there's the other one that doesn't have any frame, and it's just peaceful. And so this is this contrasts this whole, the frame, you know, the huge frame. It looks, when you look at it from without discernment, it looks like gold and jewels and this and that. But in actuality, it's made of blood and murder and whatever else, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this idea that the next corner or the next achievement will get me to be happy is like that picture.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually murdering my happiness because of
Yeah.
that.
That's really profound.
So when you, so the beauty of it is that we actually are perfect already. And yes, I'm also on the path. I have not, I'm not saying that I know what it's like. I have experienced it at times, but I don't know what, at this moment I'm not experiencing it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also wonderful, right? Because why
Yeah.
should I have to experience it all the time until it becomes something natural? And if it isn't
Mm-hmm.
natural, then it isn't for me, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like when I was always told, you know, when you were speaking about being emotional, I was always told, you know, when something happened, like, oh, let yourself cry, right? And I was like, I'm not crying. It's not there.
Yeah.
And then when it was there, I would cry like buckets, right? And people would be like, wow, you're capable of crying, or you're capable, or in other cases, it's like, as a podcast host, you listen a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then people were like, when I was a guest on another podcast, what? You can speak so much?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totally.
Right? Well, yeah,
Yep.
I can.
Yeah. It's what you said about, yeah, like the crying thing has always been really interesting to me because I don't I hate crying and I hate the feeling of crying and I don't feel good after I cry. But if I don't cry, I don't get to go through that carousel and like it does affect me. And so like I had to train myself to learn how to cry and like to just wait for it, like because it doesn't come, I guess, when I used to think it would or something. But I definitely that I resonate really well with what you said about the crying and like how it just um also I'm in a moment where things are really stressful, I'm actually very calm, and I think it's useful because I'm able to help people in a crisis. So I'm usually more like emotional before something happens, not during it or after. So that's also like that can throw people off because they're like, "Oh, you seem like you don't care as much as us." I'm like, "No, I just like for example, regardless of the outcome of any of the last three elections in America, like doesn't matter which side anyone was on, I had a apprehensive negative feeling before all three because I knew that no matter what, it wasn't going to be enough to to cool and calm down the collective society I'm currently living in. And for me, that's the most stressful part of living in my current society is their stress, um, the stress of others, and then the idea that if you're not stressed, there's something wrong with you or you're mean or you know what I mean. And then meanwhile, I'm just working hard on not being stressed. That's what I'm working on. I'm not working on taking a side. I'm really this is a hard time for me right now. Like, but it's been like this for about 12 years, maybe even 16. It's just like the overwhelming feeling of being trapped among other humans who don't seem to resonate or like or even appreciate what you and I are talking about. Like the dominating conversation and even the pseudo spiritual online conversations many times feel very fake and false and off to me. Not all the time, but many times, which is equally demoralizing for me.
Yeah, I think it's important to also acknowledge that we are false as well. And
And that's why I'm really tracking with you today, is
so
that's the ultimate hook, you know?
I've decided, okay, where I'm false is also good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And when I'm propagating illusions, that's fine too.
yeah.
Because if I'm not willing to do that, I will be suppressing the truth as well.
And how do you deal with the feeling that other people are judging you negatively? Like, are you good at that? Is that a problem for you at all?
I'm very bad at it.
Okay, me too. So that's why I'm asking.
and 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 I'm very good at judging as well. So so it's all about, but there's something very helpful about it all is that I'm willing to see that. And and when you're willing to see that, you're no longer asking others to not judge either. I'm
Mm,
not so
yeah,
because I would like, oh, stop judging me, stop this, stop that, right? And yeah, well, I'm judging them as well, and I need to, and I also want to learn to be kind and loving at all times by and obviously the only way to do that is to accept where I'm at, because I can't be kind if I'm constantly attacking myself and others all the time. But if I'm attacking myself for attacking myself and others, it just gets more.
yeah, yeah,
So yeah, it's a whole new idea, to say, okay, it's okay.
yeah, yeah. And it's funny because I have children, and you tell them that, and you mean it, but I can't tell it to myself and mean it. You know, it's like interesting that I adopted very easily to the parental role. Like it was a very seamless transition for me because I love trying to help people feel safe. That's just like a dormant and then now active part of my personality. And so it felt like a like welcome home. You have people to care about and it's appropriate. Like it's not too much to like check in on them. If my daughter has like a scary nightmare, it's not overreaching to like hug her and try to calm her down. And but yet I'm having nightmares all the time, and I need to be hugged and calmed down, and like, like how it's like interesting that, and then I'll even like every once in a while I'll crack and I'll seek someone to just tell me I'm okay. Like, not a therapist necessarily. It's not specific to anyone. Even you today can be that person for me, which is useful in a true, like a good way. And that's where I really like, that answers my earlier question about like, why am I here? I'm here to console others and be consoled by others. I'm here to like share and trade feeling good and bad, and to like, but like I said, I think the morale, I'm 43, and the reason I keep bringing my age up is that I'm trying to give people listening a sense of like what I have and have not seen. So like, I did not see the 1960s or 70s. I only heard about them, and I definitely did not see World War II or the 50s. But all I was fed in the 80s and 90s was how amazing is this country that you live in since the 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. And then in the 80s, it was still amazing. But then in the 90s, they started saying the 80s weren't amazing. And then the 90s were amazing. And then I started hearing the 90s were not amazing. And now it's the 2020s. And I'm hearing people talk about things that happened in my life who weren't here when it happened. And that's a real weird thing, because I never did that. I never talked about the 60s and 70s as a person born in the 80s. Like, it's not my place to talk about a time and period where I wasn't even on Earth, at least that I know of. So yeah, so I'm having a lot of like growing pains issues with understanding, and that's why I called it socialization before, trying to figure out what part of this mess is socialization and I can actually like sever that, but then what part of this mess is really mine to deal with in a good way, like, what else do you want to do? Like, yeah, like, what would you do if you were trapped in a cave and you knew you were going to be let out in 50 years? Like, would you live? Would you, or let's say 10 years, like whatever frame works, that it's an interesting thought experiment. Like, when do you give up? When do you decide to stop trying? How many new careers should you be starting? Should people be working into their 70s and 80s? What they always talk about how men especially tend to like wither and die the second they retire. Like, it's just like this phenomenon. And I'm not scared of that, but I can see a lot of truth to that a sense of purpose is very important.
Yeah. It's all this, we are very prone to being purpose driven.
Yeah.
And to learn that we all are equal. I'm actually working on that idea, right? From the devastation of specialness to equality, to the joy of equality, and to actually see joy in that. We're equal, because it's always like we were speaking about that swing of, okay, someone's better and this and that. Like, you were mentioning the swing in your life, and you're saying you can't, consoling yourself is not something you're used to doing.
Yeah.
But you're very open to do it for someone else. It's like I know the issue of like believing someone else can make it, but not believing I can.
Yeah.
And that's a result from what we were speaking of at the beginning, this mood swing, right, between right, having to be right, or the other person's right, having to choose.
Yeah.
And not being willing to say, okay, I'm where I'm at, I see it this way, I feel that way, and I'm probably totally wrong, but I'm still okay with it.
Yeah. And then, sorry.
Yeah, and of course in Miracles it also has these statements like, would you rather be right or happy?
Yeah, I love that. I use that sometimes reluctantly with real people in a conversation, and it always makes them pause. It doesn't work, but it does work. Like, I can tell that like in 2 hours they're going to remember that I said that and think about it. There's even a term for it in Greek philosophy. It's like there's two ways to argue. There's to argue to try to understand deeper, and there's to argue to win. And the one that we're talking about is the second. And it's like, that's the more natural urge according to Greek philosophy. Like that's why Socrates and his Socratic method was a huge boon to society, was this idea of like, how about we just talk and argue for the sake of hearing each other and learning, but without declaring a victor or a loser. And like, it would be interesting to see the American society even slightly venture into that. I think your podcast, and I think some of this, I call it the middle class podcast circuit. It's a lot of people who are like gainfully employed and doing their own thing in life, but they feel a desire to do podcasting, and it's beautiful because it was impossible when we were younger. It was utterly impossible. And so and then I'll hear podcasters denigrate podcasters. I'll hear them say like, everyone has a podcast. And I'm like, well, everyone has a car in my country. Like pretty much everyone has a house. Like why would that be a bad, and that goes back to what you said about specialization and feeling special. And I wonder about this with my children too. Like when they come home from school, I want them to know that their artwork is the most special thing I've seen that day from them. But I don't want to make them think it's the most special thing I've ever seen, because I want to like temper life for them at the right rate. But it's very difficult. That's actually one of the hardest parts of parenting I never saw coming, is like, if I tell my daughter she's the best ever every day, it actually is too much. I'll see her get annoyingly arrogant and too cocky, and like it's actually bad. I'm like, oh, now you're gonna be a person no one wants to hang out with. Like no one wants to be in the room with the diva of all divas. Bette Midler, let's get you back to like someone. Oh, sorry for using a real name. Let's get you back to a more like normal status. So like, yeah, there's I hope the younger generation is doing what I think they're doing, which is they're kind of all agreeing to like a less is more strategy for their culture and hopefully their society. I don't know if that'll stick or work, but they seem less interested in like, how many likes did my post get? How much did this get traction? How many downloads? Like that kind of stuff, which I think plagues many people from the older generations, at least. It certainly has plagued me and most people I talk to.
Yes, that is something that plagues us.
Yeah.
in this field of podcasting and in posting and whatever else people are doing on media. On the other hand, we are also willing to share things that wouldn't have been shared previously, so it can be a lot more conversational than we're used to. I mean, there were radio shows which were very conversational when I was a kid too. I'm not denying that.
Yeah.
But of course, it was just a certain amount of them, right?
Yeah. And they wouldn't have allowed, for sponsorship and ad reasons, certain types of voices to have a voice. Whereas like in the last election cycle, we saw two prominent podcast hosts contribute successfully to the victor of the election. And the reason that happened is those two people weren't playing for a corporate team. And so they got to make independent choices, and they have an independent audience that cannot be controlled. So like CNN and Fox News are jealous of certain podcasters because they have a market share that they can't tap and they can't convince and they can't sell to. And so it's very interesting. Interesting is probably me pretending I'm not on a side that I'm on. I'm very happy to watch media get dispersed randomly. I may or may not like those podcast hosts or other people with their amount of power. That's not relevant to what I'm trying to talk about, which is just, at least they got it cleanly. They got it organically, and they weren't like told, you get to be the next host of the Tonight Show. You are the only chosen person to be in charge of like the CNN desk, like it's very relieving to me that if you're honest and candid and you are yourself, there's a chance you'll get a huge speaking platform where you can make positive changes that you think are positive in society.
Yeah, it's amazing that that's possible, right?
Yeah. And
and doesn't mean that we will experience that or not. We don't know, right?
No.
And what we experience is what we experience, of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
And our interpretation of it is also very interpretive.
Yeah. Well, I've met someone who I considered very successful in the field of music. I used to be a musician, and they didn't think they were successful because their bar, they never hit it. And their bar was not my bar. And I was like, but I own your albums and I am a fan and you don't know me and I didn't grow up in your state or even your hometown. And like, that wasn't enough for them. Their bar was like, people should know me the way they know the Beatles. Like, they don't know my band that level. And it was interesting. It was very life changing as a young musician who would have been very happy to get to their level. Like that was just very eye opening for me. And I'm glad I had that in my 20s. It was really helpful to meet. So they say never meet your idols. For me, it was the opposite. It was like, okay, that was so helpful.
Yeah, it's always, one forgets that everyone is a human being.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think a lot of humans want you to not think they're a human being because, especially with social media and how mean people can be, which is a different subject. But
Yeah, one can use it to be mean too. Yeah, of course.
yeah.
Um, so one of the things that I think is very beautiful in A Course in Miracles as well is that it speaks of one of the qualities of a teacher of God is to be open-minded. What do you think of that?
I love that. And I just finished a book called Noise by Daniel Kahneman, who I'm happy to say his name. And he is actually deceased now, but his book Noise is about the noise and decision making that we don't see and wouldn't notice without like really acute testing. Whereas what we do see or ignore is our bias. And so people have been assuming for years that bias is the only thing that makes our decisions affected negatively. But what the book is about noise. And one of the biggest contributions of noise is what we just spoke about, what you just mentioned, which is the inability to change your mind and be open-minded. So like, for example, experts tend to make worse forecasts than non-experts. So people who go to school for law tend to make worse guesses about the future of law or even a case than people who never went to law school, because if you never went to discipline and you're not considered an expert in your own head, you're more open-minded, which means you're going to consider variables they wouldn't. So it's and I think godliness is my concept of godliness is unshakable acceptance. It's not even peace. It's not serenity, because that's too much of it's just unshakable acceptance. And my guru, if I have one, is Nisargadatta Maharaj, who came and went before I was on earth, but I have luckily read his book a million times. I Am That. And over and over and over again, he just keeps answering Westerners' questions about enlightenment, and he's sarcastic and he's a little wry, and he's my kind of guy. I really like the way he said it. That's why I said if I have a guru, he would be mine. And he's the most open-minded person I've been exposed to, and he's teaching me about God. That's why I read his book over and over again. And one of the things he says at the end that's like so compelling is a Westerner comes up and goes, I was here when you found out that your son or daughter died, and I saw you cry, and that's proof that you're not enlightened. And it was just like, his answer is too long for me to get into here without misquoting it to the point where I would not be doing him justice. But his answer is so great because it's the most open-minded answer ever. He's like, well, I can't tell you what it's like to be anyone else, but I just know that Nisargadatta Maharaj has a daughter who he loved very much, and he never wanted to see her suffer, and he had to watch her suffer. And so Nisargadatta Maharaj is crying, and I'm okay with Nisargadatta Maharaj crying. And Nisargadatta Maharaj wishes his daughter didn't die. And then other people would be like, why do you smoke cigarettes if you're enlightened? And he would just say, Nisargadatta Maharaj smoked cigarettes. He smoked cigarettes before he was enlightened. He smoked cigarettes after he's enlightened. Like the Western conception of enlightenment is what I'm trying to answer to you when you said, what do you think of that? And it's this unopen-minded pursuit of a finality and a conclusion to all the things that upset us. But what I'm now putting all my money on and all of my effort into is, and that's why I love this time. I keep bringing up the geopolitical climate because it's the most shaken my personality can be. And again, my least favorite thing in the world is watching people argue when I see a simple solution that would unite them. And so the story of my life is seeing that in a playground, seeing it, and then just in my country, I've seen it just get worse and worse and worse every year I've been alive. I came of age like when Bill Clinton was allegedly having sex with an intern, and he was lying about it, and they tried to throw him out of office. And then I just saw it get worse and worse and worse as far as like people picking a side nationally in politics and then drinking it as Kool-Aid into like all decisions and how you treat other people, and whether you're happy if your team's winning or not. And so what I'm looking to with enlightenment, what I'm looking to with open-mindedness is how can I wake up every day and be open-minded to like so many disparate opinions of what's going on, whether it's good or bad, whether it needs to end, whether it should end, whether it can end, and I could get more specific, but I'd rather not. It's actually much more interesting when you don't get specific.
Yeah. So open-mindedness is so important because it means that you can sit with where you're at, and because otherwise you would be rejecting.
Yeah.
So yes, the idea of acceptance, of a unshakable acceptance, certainly is part of the what I would call open-mindedness. Yes.
Yeah.
But there's also a deep-seated what you call it, trust.
Yeah.
That
Absolutely.
is the prerequisite to it. Also in A Course in Miracles, it goes through the trust before it comes to open-mindedness.
Yeah.
So
How do you feel about do you ever read about how do you feel about near-death experiences?
yeah, I think that's a very important topic, but I have and I never know whether I had one or not. Because I mean, a doctor did say I almost died at some point in my life.
Yeah.
And I did have very, very transformative experiences in that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I cannot answer to whether I actually died or not because there was no one there.
Do you feel though that trust was built, lost, or did nothing change trust-wise specifically with that experience?
Well, I certainly changed my mind about the world.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah.
And so that's an important thing. Is also another thing that is so beautiful in the ideas in A Course in Miracles, and also all the ideas of oneness, is that you actually cannot claim to be unique, nor can you claim that you cannot be understood and be honest about it, because we actually are having a common experience.
Yeah. That's very deep, and I like that a lot. Do you remember I read a lot. I read for a living and I read for pleasure, so I'm going to keep dropping things, so please don't mistake it as anything more than just you seem like you read a lot. So I'm going to ask you, have you read Byron Katie by any chance? Have you heard of her?
You mean isn't she the one with where you go through emotional states and then ask questions, and you go deeper and
She has
deeper
like
until
it's
you...
like a 4 question, and it's just 4 questions, or at least the version I have, the book I read by her, it was suggested to me that I read it. And the last, it says, so you say I hate my best friend, he's not being nice to me. Okay. And then you're supposed to say, how do you know that? And I go, I know it because he wasn't nice to me yesterday. And it goes, is that really true? And you go, yeah, it's true because I feel this way and that's how I think. And then it goes, how do you know that's true? And then usually, unless you just don't want to have it work, you have to admit that you really don't know. And then from there, it's just like, that's how you relax and you just let go. And so it's interesting because you just reminded me of that with everything you said, that it's like, at the end of the day, that's the common experience, is thinking you know when you don't know.
Yeah, or like in A Course in Miracles, it says you're never angry for the reason you think you are.
yeah.
In one of the lessons. Since
Yeah, I
you did
remember
the
that one
lessons, you
very
know
well.
that.
Yeah. And not only do I know that, but I remember too that it's even in personal psychology, they've already figured out that we rush to come up with a reason for why we have an emotion. It's not the other way around. That never once in the history of like looking at neurons firing and all that kind of stuff have they ever been able to prove that you have a thought and then an emotion. There's always an emotion and then there's thoughts. And then we try to explain both in whatever direction because we're so obsessed with linearity and causality.
Yeah. It's also like you were saying at the beginning, where you are at now will make a very different conversation than where you are at another point in your life.
Yeah.
And
even at 6 p.m. tonight,
it's actually during this conversation it's happening.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah.
Every moment is different.
Yeah. And I love the judging process too. Like if we had met and had all of our pre-interview conversations like we did, I had an idea of who you were, but I never looked at a picture of you or decided to see what you look like for a lot of reasons. But it's just, I'm not a visual like person like that. Then when we hop on before you speak, I see you. So now I have what I associate with how I associate your look, whatever the heck that means. And then I have whatever weird buildup I had from based on how we interact over email and Skype, right? And then you start talking to me and my heart and my mind and my eyes and like everything's locked in. And then I'm not even remembering the conversations we had, nor can I remember the first impression I had. Or if I do remember it, I'm laughing at how wrong I was. Like, even if, let's say I said, you're the nicest man on earth, or I said, you're the devil, it wouldn't matter. They're both laughably wrong. Like, you're a very complicated human speaking as a human to another human. And I'm getting the side of you that is professional, podcasting, wise, like, you know, and I have all these impressions. So it's so interesting to me that, and that goes back to one of the things I'm always trying to tell people about judging is like, I know I hate it when someone hasn't seen me in 5 years and then they just assume that I stopped living. That 5 years ago, the person they last talked to is exactly who I am now. And if I say I don't care that way I used to care about that thing, they don't want to let me be that. They don't want to let me have grown or have changed. And for a lot of reasons, you know, and like growing apart from people is a very hard experience for me as an earthling, as a human. It's really hard for me to like accept that I have grown apart from a lot of people I didn't want to.
Yeah, there's many things that we are able to say now that one couldn't say before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like, I know that there was a whole time in my life where I wouldn't have been willing to use words like channeling or mediumship or whatever else, or consciousness studies or whatever. Yeah. There's so many words that I would have not even, if I heard them, I would have rejected, or ghosts or whatever. Spirits, I would have rejected it all and said they're crazy, right?
Yeah.
Or it's in the realm of fantasy. Now, and now I'm like, okay, I have a different view. I see it differently, and I'm no longer rejecting it just because those are the words being used.
Yeah, I was
So
trying to. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was trying to explain to someone how difficult it is for me to hear. Most of my friends are the opposite of what we call spiritual, just for lack of a better shortcut to this point I want to make. And it like they're looking to mock people who use any of the words you just mentioned. And what I want to get to the bottom of is, why do they want to mock that, and why do they hate that so much? What threat does try not to judge, and even if you do judge, it's okay, like, why is that considered a threat to two armies of people who want to convince themselves they're divided? But I see all of them as not willing participants in like hearing people use those words. Because again, I made fun of influencers earlier, and I'm standing by that comment. I do see cheap, for sale, for profit spirituality all the time. And I grew up in Berkeley, California. I saw it way before the internet came out. But it doesn't mean A, that it's not true or that it could not be true. And B, the part that really bothers me is I shouldn't have to prove that like I've experienced swimming just because I can't describe swimming if you've never seen water or felt water. It's not my job to kowtow to people who have never had an experience that I've had many of, because I've been meditating my whole life, and I assure anyone listening, there is a place that isn't here, and it's not dreams either. And I go there all the time, and I'm pretty damn convinced that that's the only real thing there is.
Yeah,
um,
yeah. And the thing is that some people, you know, they're mocking experiences that are more real than everyday life, right?
Precisely. Yeah.
And so the whole thing is, I've adopted a much more open mind about things after various experiences in my life, including what I said. I was told that I would have died, or probably could have. I don't know. Maybe I did. Maybe I didn't. I have no idea. But I certainly was close,
Yeah.
according to
Yeah.
the doctor. And yeah, so and also losing my grandparents. My grandfather died. That had a huge impact on my experience. And yeah, you you have to understand that people are just describing human experiences, and what words they use do not matter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And in A Course in Miracles, it always says, you know, it's not, it also says it's not about the form, it's about the message.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that makes it possible for us to be open-minded, to say, okay, we're listening for the message, not for the form. It's coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that may be described as the experience of angels. It may be described as the experience of, I don't know, all kinds of things that I have never heard of as well, right?
Yeah. And I think
And
actually we just re-entered why I brought up socialization so many times, and why it's kind of a hobby horse of mine to talk about it, is that's my least favorite aspect of my socialization as an American boy brought up in the 80s, is that it was the end of the 60s and the 70s. It was, we've heard enough of this crap about the Celestine prophecy and the blah, blah, blah. And like, so the dismissal and the arrogant dismissal of any and all thoughts that are non-judgmental and not certain and not anchored in this reality and measurable scientific data. Even COVID was a weird reminder for me of that, when like both sides were arguing about the science of vaccines and masks. And I was like, you know, there's like a third way to look at all of this, but no one wants to look at it. You know what I'm talking about. And that's, so it's just interesting. It's interesting to see in my own lifetime, like several iterations of finger wagging and bashing the open-minded approach to life, for lack of a better way to explain it.
yeah, it doesn't even have to be open-minded. Some of these people who are using these words are very closed-minded.
Yeah, yeah,
To be honest about it. But
yeah,
the thing is, what I'm getting at is, I want to hear the message, and I don't
yeah,
want to be put off because of the form.
yeah, which is really important. And also, Ram Dass, my other favorite person, he always said God shows up in drag. So, like, if you really hate one of the popular names right now in geopolitics, that's probably God trying to reach you. Like, maybe you should listen better and see what the message is behind the form you hate, or the form you think you hate.
Yeah, that's very important. Yep. So we have a lot of experiences that we can't explain, and so if I am honest about that, I can't explain my own experience. I never could, and I never, probably never will be able to. Then it's totally okay that someone else wouldn't be able to do either.
Yeah.
And so drawing from these realms of experience that enable us to describe many more experiences, like angels or this unicorns, whatever we use, they enable us to express things that we wouldn't be otherwise able to express, or we may not have language for.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives us a language. And,
Yeah.
and whether it's, I mean, another person might have mathematics to explain it. Another will have, I don't know. There's so many different options, yeah, to draw from, and to judge someone because they want to explain it through mathematics. The things where you were saying is this what puts you off is when people are so certain about themselves, right? You said,
Yeah.
they're like, yeah, I know it. And
Yeah.
and I'm like, okay, they may think the idea of knowing it is totally fine. It's the idea that it's the only knowing, the only right thing that is so difficult to take. And yet
Also,
even that is something we need to learn about too, because it's also something I'm envious of at the same time.
yeah. Well said. Very well said.
So to go beyond that is really a challenge, right? It's like, okay, I would love to be able to be so certain and to be so, I don't know, adamant about things. On the other hand, I don't want to be like that because then I would be so opinionated.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, where's the good place, right? Okay, where is it? And we just both were speaking about coming from where you're at. Actually, that is a quite certain place to be at.
Yeah.
There's
And
certainty in that.
yep. And the knowing feeling you have, what you know will change, but the feeling is actually permanent. If you're the metaphor I want to use is, if you're lying in the rapids on your back with your hands out and you have a buffer, so when you hit the sides and the rocks and the walls, you're going to hit them, but you're not going to have your head turned the wrong way or whatever so that your head hits it. Like, so you have to be in like this, it's not supine, but you have to be in the right position to survive a rapid if you're on your back. But it works. Like, you can just go down, and like, unless something really aberrant happens, you'll just make it through. And so I kind of am trying to look at my life that way, that like, I'm not always in a level 4 rapid, but sometimes I am. And you know, like when people really fear war, which is something I thankfully have never experienced in my lifetime. I mean, we've had wars on Earth, but I have not lived in a country being bombed. I have not like lived in a, and I never take that for granted. Never, not even like a minute of my life, because for some reason I was born with a memory of that feeling. Like I like came into this incarnation, whether it's karma, reincarnation, or just a vivid memory from reading books as a kid. It doesn't matter to me, but I deeply understand that like nothing is worth fighting over. That like, it's the irony of war is that it's usually two sides saying we have to fight for this. But like, I went through a divorce. That's not a war, and it's not a good analogy, and it's not the same kind of thing. So like, I'd rather see a divorce, metaphorically speaking, than a war. But you don't have to have a war to have a divorce, and you don't need to get a divorce, nor do you need to have a war. But only through open-mindedness and acceptance of what is would that be possible.
Yeah, it's a big thing, to agree that we're all on common ground, and the the big issue with it is that so many people, so many of us have learned or are thinking that it's true, that we are special, that we are unique, that we can never be on common ground because that would make us boring. That would make us unsuccessful, right? And I think
Yes.
the more common our ground becomes, the more successful we are. I may be wrong, but it's an idea that I'm stating here.
I mean, I'm with you, provided we agree on like the word or metaphor of choice to describe what the best life looks like, which I think we do. I'm just saying that it would be hard for someone listening to us right now to truly understand, because I know we're talking about the same thing, which is like this it's acceptance. It's the only word I can come up. I cannot come up with a different word because I keep wanting to say equanimity, peace, like, but those have positive associations. Acceptance should not have a positive or negative association. It should just be acceptance, because that's what I'm trying to get at with war and with divorce and with peace and with all these states that we could be in as humanity in any epoch. Um, and that's just hard. It's hard for me to even right now admit that I can't do that, but I clearly can't.
Yeah. Well, let's be thankful that we are able to accept what we already do, what we already accept,
Yeah.
and and recognize that there's a lot that I'm not able to accept yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a beautiful thing to recognize.
Yeah, it is. And it's, I bring this up sometimes, especially in conversations, because it blew my mind and it still sticks to this day. But the way you make a candle is you take a string and you dip it in hot wax, and then you take it out and you let it dry, and you stick it back in, and you take it out and you let it dry, and then you stick it back. And I think that that's how acceptance really is built, is just these little conversations, these moments. Like, we'll each depart from here, but our candle is a little thicker and a little sturdier, and there's a little more acceptance because we talked about acceptance, and because we related about acceptance, and we listened to each other, which, by the way, just one podcaster to another, that is the key to podcasting.
Yes,
It's
listening.
not being a good talker. People, yeah.
Yeah, and with a willingness to engage.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the candle analogy depends on the method of making candles. That's one of them.
Yeah.
That's one of them. But yes, I think acceptance is actually something we grow into, as you were saying. So, yes, and yeah, it will. And it's also not acceptance in the sense of, some people might put it that you're not decisive if you accept, but it's actually, acceptance is one of the most powerful decisions you can make, and it makes you a lot more decisive because you're accepting where you're at.
Yeah.
And that holds decisions. That is a decision. And it actually leads to very powerful decisions. I think it's part of what leadership is made of.
I agree. Yeah. It's interesting. It's like, I think about leadership all the time, because I've worked in jobs where it's required. I've been in a part of a society my whole life. I'm in a family where it comes up, and it's interesting because the leader isn't the person who's in charge. The leader is the leader. And it's like, it's interesting to see that and realize that. And like, yeah, there always will be great leaders. And I think, that's also a good way to look at acceptance, is like, acceptance is definitely a quality in leadership. It has to be.
Yeah, because otherwise, who would follow someone who doesn't accept them?
Yeah, yeah. It's really interesting. I haven't connected a lot of things I'm connecting. It's cool.
Yeah. So it's time to wrap up. Is there a question I didn't ask you that you would like to answer?
No, I have a lot of questions for you, but I would like to have you on my podcast and ask them, because it's probably more appropriate. But I would, if it's appropriate, to ask you, why did you start this podcast? Not what's your purpose on it, but what was the impetus for it?
Well, I've always wanted to be a storyteller when I was little, because I was so impressed with the beauty of these traveling storytellers, and how much, how do you put it? I'm trying to remember what the emotion was. I was so in awe of it. I just loved it. And
Cool.
that was so, yeah. It may not be the answer to your question.
No, there's no
but
right
it's
answer.
it's a deep seated motivation.
Yeah, that's cool. it comes across that way, but it's the more podcasts I do, the more I host and the more I'm on them, the more I want to ask everyone that in a very honest and kind way, not in a like, why did you, but it's like just it's beautiful. It's beautiful to see people like stepping up right now. I don't know. I think it's a cool thing. But no, I don't have any questions for me because I'm weird and I just don't like I like talking much more than I like talking about myself. So it's a breath of fresh air to come on a podcast and talk. Like, you know.
Okay, would you like to share why you podcast?
Why I do my specific podcast would be a different answer than why I podcast. So I do a podcast, Coffin Talk, because I started it with the purpose of trying to help Americans specifically start talking about death, because I feel like our culture ignores it, much to its own peril. That mission was accomplished, and then I also all my life wanted to be a talk show host because it felt natural. I like bringing people up and I like supporting people and I like asking questions more than anything. And I like asking the opposite of gotcha questions. I like asking supportive, nice, interesting questions to find out who you are. And then by the time I'm comfortable with you and you're comfortable with me, it's appropriate to ask the questions that would be called gotcha questions, because they're no longer gotcha, because my heart is clear and my intentions are clear and I'm not looking to booby trap someone or whatever. So the reason I like to continue podcasting is I love opening up and seeing people open up to me. It's like a beautiful, great feeling because I know I did something from my heart that day. Like it's just like, okay, I did one truly unselfish thing. I just like met someone else's heart and we both opened ours to the extent we were capable in that day, that moment. So that's why I podcast still, is that I'm addicted to that feeling now in the best way possible.
Yeah, I agree that podcasting has opened up a whole another level of joy and happiness and certainty in life.
Yeah, great way. Yeah.
So yeah, I love that answer. So blessings to you. Thank you for coming on the podcast, for being willing to engage in a conversation. It was a much more conversational than usual because you were asking questions as well. But what to expect when two podcast hosts encounter each other. So thank you for that, and would you please let people know about the podcast, let them and review it, and if anyone comes to mind that would be a good guest, you are welcome to refer to me. They can contact me.
Cool.
Anyone who wants to be a guest, please reach out to me, who's listening or watching this. And yeah, blessings to you all until next time.